Margaret Thatcher. Even today, decades after she left office, that name brings up some really powerful feelings, doesn't it?
It really does. She wasn't just the UK's first female prime minister. She was, a political force that completely reshaped the country.
And that's our mission today. We want to understand the woman who became the Iron Lady, look at her biggest policy choices, and figure out why her legacy is still so fiercely debated.
To get it, you really have to look at three big themes from her time in power, from 1979 to 1990.
Okay, what are they?
First, she took over a country that was in a deep, deep economic crisis. Second, she made a very deliberate choice to challenge and, break the power of established groups, especially the trade unions.
And the third.
A huge shift toward a free market economy that changed the structure of British life forever.
So let's start at the beginning. Who was she before all this? She was born Margaret Hilda Roberts in a town called Grantham in 1925.
Right, and her father ran a grocery shop. He was also really involved in local politics and the church.
So she grew up with these ideas of hard work, saving money, personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And she had this immense drive. She was a very bright student, went to Oxford University to study chemistry.
Chemistry, that's interesting.
It is. It's a very rigorous, fact-based science. But at the same time, she was already deep into politics, becoming president of the university's Conservative Association.
So you have this mix of a scientific mind and political ambition right from the start.
Exactly. And then her career path gets even more interesting. She didn't stick with chemistry. She worked as a research chemist for a bit, but then she studied law.
And not just any law.
No, she became a barrister specializing in tax law. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle. It means she didn't just see the national budget as a politician would.
She saw it like an accountant.
Her lawyer. Something with strict rules that you could reform and optimize.
After a couple of failed attempts, she finally got into Parliament in 1959. And by 1970, she was the education secretary.
And right away, she showed what kind of politician she was going to be. She made some really tough, unpopular cuts to school funding.
I think I remember hearing about that, something about school milk.
That's the one. It showed everyone she was willing to take the public backlash to stick to her plan.
And that reputation for being tough, that must have helped her rise.
It did. By 1975, she did something pretty audacious. She challenged the leader of her own party and won.
The first woman to lead a major political party in Britain.
An incredible moment. But the country she was about to lead in 1979, it was a mess.
The economy was in terrible shape. They just had the winter of discontent.
Right. Widespread strikes, rubbish piling up in the streets. It felt like the country was falling apart. And on top of that, you had runaway inflation.
Prices were just skyrocketing.
Cripplingly so. She won the election promising to fix all of it, to roll back the power of the state. And she got to work immediately.
So this is where Thatcherism really begins. And her main enemy was inflation.
That was target number one. She believed the government was simply spending and printing too much money.
So she brought in this new economic theory, monetarism.
Yes. The core idea is that you have to strictly control the amount of money circulating in the economy.
It's that analogy, right? If you have too much money chasing too few goods, prices go up.
Exactly. Her goal was to aggressively tighten that money supply.
And how do you do that?
The main tool was incredibly high interest rates. It suddenly became very, very expensive to borrow money.
Which means businesses can't expand or invest.
Or even survive. The immediate result was that many factories had to close down. Unemployment shot up, especially in the industrial parts of the country.
That's a huge price to pay.
A devastating price for many communities.
Yeah.
But Thatcher was completely focused. She insisted it was necessary pain for long-term gain. She famously said there is no alternative.
That same confrontational style defined her next big battle, the trade unions.
In the 1970s, the unions had enormous power. As we said, they could bring the country to a halt. Thatcher saw them as an obstacle to modernizing Britain.
So she didn't negotiate with them.
No, she brought in new laws to make it much harder for them to strike legally. And this all came to a head with the coal miners' strike in 1984.
A huge symbolic fight that lasted a full year.
A brutal year. But the government was prepared for it, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. They'd been stockpiling coal for years to make sure the power stations kept running.
They took away the miners' biggest weapon, the threat of a national blackout.
So in the end, the miners had to go back to work without winning.
And that was it. It was a decisive victory for her government, and it permanently broke the power of the unions in Britain.
Okay, so after the unions, she turns her attention to who owns what. Privatization.
Right. Before her, Huge parts of the economy were state-owned. The phone company, the gas company, the national airline.
And she started selling them off to private investors.
The argument was that private companies would be more efficient, more competitive, and offer better service.
But there was a political angle to it as well, wasn't there?
A huge one. They encouraged millions of ordinary people to buy shares in these new companies.
Creating a share-owning democracy.
Exactly. Gave millions of people a direct financial stake in the success of the free market. Of course, critics argued that essential services shouldn't be run for profit.
This toughness she showed at home, we saw it on the world stage too, especially in 1982.
The Falklands War. That was a defining moment. Argentina invaded the Falklands, a remote British territory.
And her response?
It was instant and absolute. She sent a massive naval task force 8,000 miles to take them back.
The war was short but intense, and a British victory.
A victory that had a transformative effect back home. Her popularity soared. It really solidified that Iron Lady image and helped her win the next election by a landslide.
She was also a huge figure in the Cold War.
A very strong opponent of communism and the Soviet Union. She formed a really close alliance with U.S. President Ronald Reagan. They both agreed to ramp up military spending to pressure the Soviets.
But she was also a diplomat.
Very much so. She was one of the first Western leaders to see that something was changing in the Soviet Union. She famously said of their new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, that he was a man she could do business with.
Which helped open up dialogue between the East and West.
It did. And she also negotiated the very complex agreement to hand Hong Kong back to China. It showed she could be very pragmatic.
Let's go back to a domestic policy that was incredibly popular at the time, right to buy.
Yes. This allowed people renting their homes from the local government council tenants to buy them at a big discount.
The goal was to create a property-owning democracy.
And it worked, in a way. Millions of families became homeowners for the very first time. It was a revolutionary idea for many working-class people.
But there was a downside, a big one.
A huge one. The government didn't build new social housing to replace all the homes that were sold.
Which led to a massive shortage of affordable rental homes down the line.
A shortage that the UK is still struggling with today.
So as we get to the end of her time in power, things start to go wrong. And it all centers on one policy, the poll tax.
Officially called the community charge. And it was a political disaster.
Explain what it was.
It was a flat rate tax to pay for local services. The idea was that almost every adult paid the same amount, regardless of their income or how much their house was worth.
So a millionaire in a mansion paid the same as someone in a tiny apartment.
That's exactly right. The public reaction was furious. There were huge protests. Some of them turned violent. Millions of people just refused to pay it.
It became a symbol of a government that had just stopped listening.
It did.
Hmm.
And her own party started to panic. They saw her as too dominant, too uncompromising, especially on the issue of Britain's relationship with Europe.
So the end came from within her own party.
Yes. She faced a leadership challenge. And while she won the first vote, it wasn't by enough. Her cabinet told her she wouldn't win a second round. In November 1990, she resigned.
After more than 11 years, so how do we sum up her legacy? It's so divisive.
It is, because her changes were so fundamental. Supporters will say she saved the British economy, broke the unions, and modernized the country.
But her critics?
Her critics will say she destroyed industrial communities, created huge social division, and widened the gap between rich and poor. With Thatcher, there really is no middle ground. People either admired her or disliked her with a real passion.
She fundamentally transformed the United Kingdom, leaving a legacy of firm leadership and massive economic change that influenced countries far beyond Britain's borders. The question you have to consider is this. Were her radical changes the painful medicine the UK needed, or did they create divisions that are now impossible to heal?
Good luck with your studies.